Check 1 2 1 2 3. All right, we appear to be good here.
If you want details, you have to find it on Twitter.
All right, we're good. Oh, defensive touchdowns are always nice. Got to watch that when you play Michigan State. They're a good defense, but Ohio State's an outstanding defense as well. And it's Sparty and the Buckeyes in Ohio Stadium on Saturday night, 7:30. Welcome to a Wednesday edition of the We Tackle Life Spielman and Hooley podcast. Hello, Mr. Spielman.
How are you?
I'm doing well. It's interesting to me. Ohio State is so successful over the years in football that the losses just stick out like a historical event that you can remember exactly where you were when it happened. And so
that's quite a testament, isn't it?
It
to
is
the greatness of a program.
It is, because it's Purdue, Iowa, rear view mirror, but boy, there's still front view mirror for a lot of people, because every time Ohio State goes on the road, it's like, oh, is this another Purdue? Is this another Iowa? And then every time you play Michigan State, you hear about 98, and you hear about 2013 Big Ten title game, and you hear about 2015 at home, the Zeke Elliott game where he didn't carry the ball and was mysteriously in the hospital that week and all that. So it's interesting. It is, you're right, it's a testament to Ohio State's greatness that the losses just stick out so much that you just can't really eradicate them from your mind.
I think this team is not immune to losing. I think it's immune to losing like they lost to Iowa and they lost to Purdue because of the superior advantage that they have on defense. Just a note on how good this defense is. Akuda couldn't get on the field last year. Wasn't good enough to get on the field. Right?
Well, he played,
but okay.
He wasn't an impact player.
He wasn't a starter, was he?
I think he was a starter.
I thought Kendall Sheffield and Arnett.
Damon Arnett. Yeah, I mean, he was in a rotation.
Okay,
more of a rotational
okay, but
player.
we're talking about possibly the best corner in college football.
Yeah, he's pretty special at Nebraska.
And Arnett's probably going to be a first rounder.
Yeah.
And so, in the way that that front nine is playing, Mark D'Antonio had a great quote yesterday. Well, he's in actually a funny quote from Coach D'Antonio.
A funny quote.
That I rarely think of Chase Young in a human form.
In a human form, right?
Oh man! When I see when I see his dreadlocks or braids coming out of the back, I keep thinking of like he's like a predator guy. Man.
Exactly.
He's the predator. And that's a great nickname for a great pass rusher in the visor and all that. If he has a visors on or something like that. I talked to I was up in New York. And I was speaking to some pro personnel people up there, and they are enamored with Chase Young.
Oh man,
enamored. And I said, "Is he better than Bosa?" And they said, well, they didn't even hesitate.
Really?
They did not even hesitate.
Yes.
Now, I think
the answer is yes.
Yes.
Huh?
Well, yeah, and I think I have to think about that. I think they're a little bit different type of player.
Do we need to differentiate which Bosa we're talking about?
Well, I think they're the Nick right now.
Okay.
They're different types of pass rushers. I mean, Chase is pure athlete and speed off the edge, where Joey and Nick are both probably a little more polished technically or technician-wise, using their hands and things like that. And I don't know how. I mean, right now Chase is just superior to whatever matchup he's created. Now, granted, it's only 4 games. To get
5 games.
5 games in. Excuse me. and they're going to play better competition. But it's just fun for him, and fun for me to watch him play. Here's the thing about Michigan State: there's always been, and you've been around this most of your adult life, Bruce, and you know this. I think you agree with me on this. That Michigan State, out of all the teams in the Big Ten, walk around with the biggest chip on their shoulder, and they use it to their advantage.
They do, yeah.
I can promise you that Michigan State will not be intimidated by Ohio State. They believe that they can play with anybody. It'll be the best challenge, or the toughest challenge, that this Ohio State offense has received against a pretty good Michigan State defense. And the only way, if I'm Mark D'Antonio, and I said this on our last podcast, I'm saying it again, I'm meeting with my coaches. I'm not telling my players this, I'm telling my coaches this. Look, can't make mistakes. We can't help them in any way. We can't have untimely penalties. We can't have drop passes for first downs, or drop passes for touchdowns, or drop passes to put us in field goal position. If we do get a chance to score, we have to get every point that we possibly can. Then on the other hand, on defense, we've probably have to win legitimately, maybe +3 at the minimum, +5 at the maximum to win this football game in turnovers, because I think Ohio State is that much better. But the one thing going in, and this is Coach D'Antonio's style. I mean, he's going to be angry. He's always angry, but he's not going to let his guys be intimidated by the fact that they play Ohio State. He does a great job of getting them to believe that they can beat Ohio State, and I think Mark D'Antonio has beaten Ohio State more than any other team in Big Ten.
As much as well, he's beaten Ohio State. The game we forget about is the year Luke was the coach, where they had Kirk Cousins at quarterback and they won 10-7 in the stadium. He beat Urban twice, and the only guy who did that, other than D'Antonio, was Dabo.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And so
nine losses for Urban, 2 to Mark D'Antonio.
That's
Big
amazing.
Ten title game,
Yeah.
and of course 2015.
And so the guy can coach, and he gets his guys to play. You might not like the style that they play, but it's their style. And the thing I like about Michigan State, and I've always admired about Michigan State, and like Wisconsin, they know who they are, and they do not go away from who they are. And they recruit to who they are.
Well, to your point about their inferiority complex, I mean, they get a double dose of it because, they're second fiddle in their state to Michigan. Michigan's the royalty program, not necessarily in terms of results lately, but, in terms of profile.
Tradition, history,
tradition and
fan
history.
base.
Right,
Yeah.
sure. So there's that. They don't like being Michigan's little brother. And, Ohio State is looming and always has been looming. And the biggest wins in Michigan State history have always been against Michigan and Ohio State, even back to the Woody era in 1974. I remember as a young kid watching the 74 game on TV, and they broke an 88-yard run in the final minute, and Ohio State scrambled down the field, scored, disputed ending and all that. And that game, you go to the Michigan State press box, Levi Jackson running 88 yards down the right sideline is a huge picture in the Michigan State press box 40-some years later. It's still one of the landmark events in their history. So they've had success. Mark D'Antonio is the all-time winningest coach there. He's got 111 wins. So that tells you, they haven't had a ton of guys who've done a great job there. It's been a stepping stone program. Nick Saban was there. He couldn't wait to get to LSU. So, but do they have players? Yes. Do they have players from Ohio? Yes, 28. And so those guys, 28 of them, probably none offered by Ohio State. And so when you come into Ohio Stadium, you're loaded for bear with an I'm going to show you attitude.
And all of his guys are tough guys, and they're physical guys. That's what I talk about, where he understands and knows what he is as a coach, knows what he wants as a team, and recruits to those traits. And it's been beneficial for them. He's run a very successful program under the radar program, just the way he likes it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we'll see. They have a very good defense. They're limiting teams to 55 yards rushing. I think Ohio State's actually a little better than that. But offensively, they're challenged. They put up, they had 40 against Indiana, but one was a last play defensive touchdown. Brian Lewerke, their quarterback, was horrible last year up there, and they've managed 3 field goals against Ohio State in their last 2 games against them. Remember 2 years ago, they came into Ohio Stadium. Ohio State was not playing well. And that was the Mike Weber game where he really had a great game. We ran him off the field. I think it was 48-3. And then last year it was 9-6 going to the fourth quarter, and then it was 26-6. It ended up Michigan Michigan State's defense was just on the field all day long and finally ran out of gas. And that's what, as you alluded to, they can't afford to do Saturday night. They got to make first downs. They've got to keep the chains moving and at least give their defense a couple of minutes break because, boy, this Ohio State offense. The thing that I admire about this Ohio State team to this point in time is, and I said it to Ryan Day yesterday. I had an exchange with Ryan Day yesterday about how do you read your team pre-kickoff? You just went out there against Nebraska with all the potential for distraction, game day, night
First
game,
time on the road,
all this
quarterback.
stuff. Yeah, well, I mean, they were in Indiana, but Nebraska's a much different environment.
Correct. Thank you.
And you just went out there and played like we're here on business and we're gonna do business. And he said, that he'll say what every coach says. It starts in practice, and you got to have that, and you got to preach toughness and all that stuff. But you have to keep freshening the message. I said it a few weeks ago. We kind of laughed about me being a fanboy. The more I'm around this staff, there is really something special going on in that building. There's something very special going on in that building with the staff and how it works together, and with the players and how they react to this staff. And again, it's very difficult to describe what I see with this team without people taking it like it's a criticism of what was there before. It's not meant as a criticism of what's there before. It's simply analysis of what's different about now. That's all it is. It's analysis about what's different now. I would say generally, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban coach the same way, run their programs the same way, or a lot of similarities. And no one can argue with the success of either man. You put the Mount Rushmore of college football coaches up there. If they're not on it, they're in the conversation. And so I'm not saying Urban did it wrong. I'm just saying that Ryan does it a teeny bit differently, and his staff is extremely impressive. Jeff Hafley, his defensive coordinator yesterday, talking about why the staff performs for Ryan Day. I find this very, very interesting.
I think it all starts with Ryan. I think that's a coach. He really does coach. He doesn't often tell you exactly what to do and guide you. He lets you do your job. As any assistant, that's probably one of the most important things. The other things he does, which to me, which a lot of people probably don't even know, he respects our family and our time so much. In this business, that's very rare. That head coach respects that. You know what? You guys can see my daughter's running been in a long time. My wife came over here for a long time she was. So what that does for me is that just kind of it makes this job so much better and so much more fun that he involves my family and it feels comfortable for him every day. Which also leads to look at the way he treats our players. He's tough on what he does well. That's just not talk, that's who he is. And when you do that and you have a culture and staff and players that like that, I just think guys enjoy being in this building right now. And I think that's why they're playing hard and fast and they're going to find a way to get it.
I have no doubt everything he says is true. I do think Coach Tressel was open to families being over there. I think Urban was open to families being over there, and that's how you have to run a program, in my opinion, because of the time demands of the job in coaching, especially in season. And so I always respect coaches that are. I'm sure not all of them are like that, but when I was working college football, I used to see coaches' kids and families and wives around there all the time, which is, I think, important. I agree with Jeff. I think Jeff also, you didn't play the cut, but I listened to it. It's amazing, this is him, the amount of talent that he's come in to coach.
He was very complimentary of the talent. He said the talent they've recruited is ridiculous.
I will say this until the day I die. Number one aspect for winning in college football is recruiting.
Yeah.
When I'm hiring an assistant coach, I'm going to make the assumption that X's and O's, he knows what he's doing because everybody's kind of running the same thing in college football. What kind of recruiter is he? Can he go in and win on the road? That's one of the biggest evaluations I would make when I'm hiring an assistant coach. But everything is great when you're winning.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a locker room when you're winning. So everything is great, right? And everything is magnified when you're winning, and everything is magnified when you're losing.
Yes.
And that's the reality of the situation. I do know this. I think Ryan lets his coaches coach. I think most coaches do. That's on the defensive side of the ball. Because he's not coaching the defense. He's hired guys to coach the defense. So he lets those guys do their job. But when you're intimately involved with the offense and you're the main play caller on the offense, you're involved with every part of that offense. And that's not to saying you don't let your coaches coach. It's just that if he's going to be 98% of his time is going to be spent on the offensive side of the ball, of course he's going to let his defensive guys do their job. Get out of the way and do your job. You're the ones that are invested in the game plan. You're the ones that work the individual drills. You're the ones that work 7-on-7, 9-on-7, goal line, short yardage, blitz period. I trust you to do the job that I hired you to do. And I think Urban did that for the most part with his defense. Except when he had, sometimes guys have to step in. Except when Sammy Watkins caught 10 passes.
18.
18 passes, and all of them were screens. And he said, that's never going to happen again here at Ohio State,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I want to get into that briefly because we've got NFL to get to. But we do want to thank West Jefferson Plumbing and Heating for sponsoring the podcast. West Jefferson Plumbing and Heating featuring Lennox high-efficiency products. If you're doing a new build, you need a furnace, West Jefferson Plumbing and Heating is the place to go. They'll give you up to hundreds off your new install furnace or your replacement furnace. They also have, obviously, air conditioning nailed frontwards and backwards. You got a room in your home where you can't get the ductwork to, no worries. They have individual units where they can air condition that room for you. Plumbing. The thing I love about West Jet Plumbing and Heating, they're on time. You know, you don't want to sit around and wait. Guys, an hour late. That's not going to happen with West Jefferson Plumbing and Heating, and they service all of Central Ohio. 614-879-9606 is the number, and you can reach them on the web, westjeffplumbingandheating.com. You mentioned the Sammy Watkins game. There's been a lot of talk about this team playing a lot of zone defense. The reason Ohio State became an exclusive press man team, or almost exclusive press man team, was because Urban didn't want to see swing passes and being death by 1,000 paper cuts. So is that the way teams will, if they have the talent, and I don't think there are any teams on the regular season schedule that do, but let's say we flash forward to a playoff game, and it's Georgia, it's Alabama, it's Clemson, and they've got deep wide receiving cores. They've got fast guys out in the flat. They've got a talented quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa. Is that how Ohio State could be vulnerable defensively? Why would it not happen again if they're playing zone a lot like they did back then?
There's different types of zone that you can play. You can play one with 2 deep where you have 5 guys underneath. You can play 3 deep where you have 4 guys underneath. You can rush 3 and drop 8. And a lot of the zone defenses are determined and based upon formations of what an offense, and this is kind of important, this is where coaches earn their money. What do they like to do in this formation depending on down and distance? And when they call that play, okay, even though we're playing zone, you can show press coverage, and that's going to take the offense off of that play, because if you risk being impressed, that could be a pick 6 the other way or minus yardage. So this is where the coaches determine their game plan on how they do it. Plus, you know, zone defense isn't what it used to be, except by the Bengals, which is, I'll get into that in a little bit. But zone defense used to be everybody drop to a spot and break on the football. That's not the case. Everything's a matchup zone now, so it almost turns into man when you have a guy in your zone. And so there's different concepts that you can do, and that comes by game planning. If that quick screen, for example, it's just a numbers game outside. If you have more offensive players than they do have defensive players, or an even amount of blockers to their even amount of defenders, then you run the quick screen and hoping your guy makes a guy miss in open field. So I don't think they'll be vulnerable, because I think there'll be a game plan to attack a team like that. But what allows you to do that, Bruce, is also that if you can win and be a hold up against the run without putting an extra man in the box, which Ohio State has been more than capable of doing in its first 5 games, then you'll be fine. You know what was interesting, where they were a little bit vulnerable, and most teams are a little bit vulnerable, When did Nebraska have a little bit of success moving the football?
When they ran that old school.
When they
option.
went back to 1980.
Yeah.
With fullback trap.
Yeah.
Fullback dive. Counter option. Lead option. So no teams know how to defend that because nobody runs
Nobody
that.
runs it,
and
yeah.
nobody practices against that. So that takes a little bit of an adjustment. And
But
so-
even there, they threw an extra linebacker out there. And I think about the adjustments they can make, and I think about the personnel that they have. You know, let's say they're playing Clemson and you got Justin Ross, big tall wide receiver. Jeff Okudah's a big tall corner.
Yeah.
He can cause a lot of problems for people because you can't just out jump Jeff Okudah. You look at a guy like Baron Browning, gives you a different look at middle linebacker than Tuff Borland does. So you got some versatility there. Malik Harrison's a big, tall, long athlete.
He's a
Played
good
quarterback
player.
in high school. And Hafley talked yesterday about, we not only play zone, but we spread 4 guys out, and they're big, tall, long guys with a lot of reach. And it looks like there's no field open when you
Exactly.
have those guys out there. So they have a lot of depth and a lot of different interchangeable parts that they can plug, play, and respond to those situations where should the other team come up with something like that, okay, well, at least we have the personnel we can throw out there and try it.
You know, you have the personnel, but you also have to have a scheme to counter 2 backs in the backfield and I backs like nobody says. And, we'll see what Michigan State comes out with. That's a little bit more of an old school type of offense. So the one challenge that Ohio State has to be secure on is their gap responsibilities because they play so much spread. And all of a sudden you get a 2-back team or 12-1, like Ohio State will run a little bit of 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends. You have to make sure that everybody understands where their gap responsibility is because gap responsibilities change when there's 2 backs in the backfield as opposed to 1 back. If there are 2 backs in the backfield up front, as a defender, as a linebacker, 2 backs equal you're responsible for 2 gaps. If it comes to the right, I got this gap. If it goes to the left, I got that gap. The reason why you're responsible is because you have an extra blocker in the backfield, so they create a new gap by which way they run.
Sure.
There's a new gap created.
Yeah.
Does that make sense
Yes,
to
it
you?
does.
But when there's 1 back in the backfield, they can't create a new gap because there's not an extra blocker in the backfield to create that new gap. So those are things that are pretty easy to coach, but you have to be able to rep those in practice because it looks different than it does against 1 back because of that new gap created.
It's really fascinating to think about the chess match between a Clemson Ohio State, a Georgia Ohio State, an Alabama Ohio State over a month period where you have really elite coaches on both sides and really elite talent
That's
on
really
both sides and
exciting.
all the planning and all that stuff that would happen, which I certainly think Ohio State is going to be a part of that. Now, we'll get to Gene Smith and what he had to say yesterday about the California proposal that could lead to compensation for players' name and likeness. But you have the Bengals this week. Mo Egger, sports talk host on 1530 in Cincinnati, tweeted this yesterday. We have Bengals Cardinals tickets to give away. I don't even have a joke for you. Two of the 6 winless teams in the NFL at this juncture, the Arizona Cardinals with Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury, and the Cincinnati Bengals coming off a 23-7 as convincing a loss at 23-7 as you've seen because the Steelers and their 9 first-round picks on defense, Bud Dupree, the kid from Michigan, Devin, who's the linebacker? Devin Bush.
TJ
8
Watt.
sacks. 8 sacks of Andy Dalton. Cam Hayward, by the way, one of those 9 picks, and he had his way with Andy Dalton too, and his way with Billy Price.
Well, here's the thing about with the Bengals right now. Okay, their offensive line is made up of guys that are from other teams or other programs. You have Andre Smith.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was from their program, but then he went and left, come back.
To a bunch of different teams. All right, Cordy Glenn has been out with a concussion for, 3 or 4 months. I don't know the significance of it. It must have been a very bad one. He's not playing. You have Michael Jordan, who's a rookie at offensive guard.
Former Buckeye.
And Michael is doing a good job for a rookie, but could have used some little more development, but he's hanging in there. Trey Hopkins, former Cleveland Brown, I believe, was he not? Or
Don't remember that, but a lot of Browns I don't remember.
I don't think Trey started out with the Bengals.
Bobby Hart?
Bobby Hart, another guy that didn't start out
Yeah.
with the Bengals.
They're cobbled together line.
And
they're hurting because Jonah Williams, their number 1 pick's not
here's
there.
the thing.
And they whiffed on 2 tackles a couple of years ago. They whiffed on Cedric
Well,
Ogbuehi and Jake Fisher. They whiffed.
Yeah, and the other guy, their number 1 draft pick is out. for
Jonah
the year.
Williams, yeah.
Jonah Williams, and then of course A.J. Green is out, and so obviously it's not the Bengal team that they were hoping to take the field with. So
True.
I'm giving them a little bit of slack there. But you can go that and say about the Washington Redskins, who have 6 offensive starters that they thought they were going to have to take the field with,
Yeah.
right? They don't have it.
Got to find a way.
And so you see the results when you're playing with backups. Here's the results. So when you are playing with backups and you're playing a game, you have no room for error. Tyler Eifert drops a touchdown pass, changes the complexion of the game. They get a fumble on the Steelers' 15-yard line, and they get 3 points out of it. They were 1 for 3 in the red zone with 3 points out of 3 trips to the red zone on the road. Can't do that. You're not going to win.
No.
You can't have untimely penalties. Their tackling in space was atrocious. I don't think it's been good all year. They could not eliminate yard after catch. And they're playing a pretty good offense, in a creative and unique offense, when they play the Arizona Cardinals this week. So I'm interested in the game. I'm doing the game. Thanks, Tom, for living in Cincinnati and asking for a home game. But hey, I'll be home for dinner, which is good.
It's good. Very good thing.
But watch Kyler Murray. It's interesting. I think he's a really good player. I think he's learning some hard lessons, but once he learns those lessons, watch out. I don't know if you're a believer in Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I kind of am.
I am.
More than I am Lamar Jackson.
Interesting note, and I'm going to ask Cliff Kingsbury this when I meet with him this weekend. And I think it's one of the smartest things that, if he did this, it's probably one of the best decisions that he's made as a coach. He took, because it's a new offense, so he took Oklahoma's terminology
Mm-hmm.
and used it for the Arizona Cardinals.
That's
So
smart.
the Oklahoma playbook is the same as what the Arizona Cardinals playbook is.
Helps
and
his
so if
quarterback
you look
adjust.
at Kyler Murray, and I watched the film yesterday, he's correcting and putting people where they're supposed to be. So I thought that was a great move. I'm going to see if he'll confirm. Maybe he won't even tell me. I don't know. I've never met Cliff, so I'm kind of anxious to talk to him. And interesting reading the comments of Zach Taylor. It's tough, man. It's 0-4, and there's like no hope. And I've been in. You know how great it is to walk around the Ohio State building. You know, it's hard to walk around the building when
It
you're
is.
0-4. Your
Jeff
job
Hafley
depends
made
on
that-
winning.
Jeff Hafley made that point yesterday. He said he's having more fun coaching now, and he said in San Francisco, we weren't winning. It's hard
Winning's
to have
everything.
fun when you're not winning.
It all comes down to that. Always has, always will. The one constant.
All right, yesterday before the Ohio State press conference began, Gene Smith, the Ohio State athletic director, came into the room. You might have heard of this California proposal where they've passed a proposal to compensate athletes for their name and likeness. It is...
It's called pay for play, but that's not.
It's not pay for play. It's only
That's what it's called.
That's
though.
what it's called. But basically, it's here at Ohio State, it would work like Justin Fields. I would assume there'd be a number of advertisers clamoring
Honda,
that Justin
for
Fields
example.
represent them. Yes, Honda, for instance. So let's say
And a banner of
Just
Justin
say
Fields.
theoretically they could put Justin Fields' picture on a banner, put Honda underneath it, and hang it in the south end zone at Ohio Stadium, and he would be compensated for that. We're just talking theory. So here is Gene Smith on the NCAA, what it has done over the years, and where this could lead, and how he feels about it.
NCAA is an organization that's taken a long time to try and modernize itself. In the last 5 to 8 years, it's been made investments, become more modern. Creating the school is an example. So we can't have a situation where we have schools in or states with different rules. The organization is going to compete with it. Can't happen. It's not reality. So if that happens, then what we need is federal help.
So he's calling for federal legislation to come in and make some standard that applies to everyone. I'm always fearful when the feds get their hands on anything. But he is right. You can't have Pac-12 schools compensating guys for their name and likeness, and no other school doing that, because guess what? The Pac-12 will start recruiting like crazy because kids will want to go there and they'll want to get paid. So you have been a passionate advocate of this, and you've experienced it
Well,
having
not
your...
quite this. Go ahead.
Well, you've been a passionate advocate of players being compensated in some way, shape, or form,
Right.
more than they currently are.
Well, I had a lawsuit. Anybody that has followed this, and the lawsuit was for exactly that. The only difference between my lawsuit and what has been legislated was the fact that I was only fighting for former players.
Mhm.
That when a university uses a former player with a third party, example Honda, and a banner with my name and likeness on it, there should be some compensation for that player.
Or permission ahead of time.
Or permission. Well, at least permission at the very least, but there should be compensation because Honda's benefiting, Ohio State was benefiting, and meanwhile, hey, thanks for your picture.
Thanks for playing here a couple years, 30 years ago, so we can use your name.
Well, the other thing too, Bruce, is that you would have no control over who you would want to represent you. If there's a vaping company or a beer company or something, which I drink beer. I used to chew tobacco a long time ago. I don't want to do that. I don't want to support that anymore. Then I now can choose that I don't want to put my name in likeness with that. So now we told them, and it's been what, 3 years almost? It's crazy. I can't even believe how long it's been.
What's the status of your lawsuit?
Well, I
Is it
settled
still
with
going?
Ohio State, and Gene was very cooperative, and any money that I received went to the Stephanie Spielman Fund for Breast Cancer Research and to help start the William White Fund. And so I didn't receive any proceeds from that. I just want to make sure people understand that because I was doing it for the right reasons with Ohio State. Now IMG, that's still working its way through the court system.
IMG is the organization that has the broadcast rights to Ohio State football.
And everything else. They sell everything.
And everything else. So IMG acquires the broadcast rights, and then they go out and they sell advertising, and that's how they make their money. They pay Ohio State a fee to get the rights, then they go sell advertising, and then whatever they're getting above what they're paying Ohio State is IMG's profit.
Right. And Michigan has done this with a sub-company in its players with banners. So it's still working its way through its courts. But throughout negotiations, we've said all along that it's coming to this. You guys, you're blind if you don't see the future. I understand what Gene is saying. If I were on that side of it, I'd be standing up, pounding the table too. But it's going to come to this. And he's going to say, well, you can't have different rules for different people. Well, there are different rules for different people already. Go to Ohio State's training facility. Go to their players' lounge, their smoothie shacks, in which, gosh, I wish I had, right?
Yeah.
And the meals that they have for those guys, they had on Twitter that they all did a thing to LeBron James about Taco Tuesday, and they're all eating these tacos. Go to let's say Toledo, for example, or Ball State. You walk in there, you know what you see? A box of bagels. Not egg white omelets.
Yeah.
A box of bagels. So everybody's already playing under different rules. Do you see this? Doesn't change anything.
Absolutely.
Now, the only thing that I would be an advocate of, and he's exactly right, the NCAA and the universities, which the NCAA compiles the universities, have made great strides.
Cost of attendance, parents can get some money to go to postseason games, postgraduate help for guys who